How did The Simpsons predict Trump's assassination attempt, Ukraine, and chaos in Russia? What actually came true, and what should we expect this year? And believe me, this is more intense than Nostradamus. The craziest part will be at the end. Why do people even listen to The Simpsons? They predicted 9/11 with a tower destruction several years before it happened. In 1998, The Simpsons mentioned Ebola fever on the show. And what do you think? In 2014, it became a global threat again, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. And the pandemic? In 1993, in the episode Margin Chains, a virus arrived in Springfield from China, causing mass casualties. Also quarantine, everyone in masks, and infected by bats. What was mocked in the series itself as complete nonsense? Sound familiar? Or look at Lisa Simpson in 2001. She appeared as the future president in a purple coat and pearl necklace. Exactly like Kamala Harris at the 2021 inauguration. Or here's some recent tragedies. Remember that horrific story when the submersible with billionaires sank near the Titanic? June 18th, just an hour and a half after submersion, Titan suddenly disappeared from radars. On board were 5 super rich people who decided to personally see the legendary ship. But their expensive excursion turned into a nightmare. Many questions remain: what exactly happened, what they felt in their final seconds, what they thought about. But the strangest thing is, this scenario was already played out. Guess where? In The Simpsons. In a 2006 episode, Bart also goes to the Titanic, stumbles upon treasure chests, and after losing oxygen, Homer miraculously wakes up in the hospital. Coincidence? I don't think so. And now add to this Mike Reiss, The Simpsons screenwriter, who descended to the Titanic 3 times on the OceanGate submersible and lost contact each time. He even joked back then that sooner or later a real tragedy would happen. So who's the prophet here? Well, what about predictions? In 2013, The Simpsons touched on a topic that sounded like science fiction. What would happen if humanity seriously took up studying black holes? And of course, they scheduled all this for 2024. Back then, it seemed like the distant future to many, but now everything looks completely different. India's recent satellite launch could become the first step towards studying black holes, which were previously considered practically inaccessible to researchers. Sounds exciting, but immediately raises the question, what if we learn too much there? Black holes aren't just sources of knowledge, but also potential threats. They can absorb everything in their path, including our planet. I hope it doesn't come to that, of course, but the very fact that The Simpsons hit the mark again makes you think. Scary? You bet. But this is just the beginning. Next will be predictions that could truly shock you. Ready? Let's go. Here's a tougher hint, for example. In the 25th season of The Simpsons, there's an episode featuring a map of the USSR, expanded to include all 15 former republics, plus Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Joke, satire perhaps. But what if it's not just a gag? You'll say, well, it's just a map, what's there to worry about? But there's one interesting detail here. Inspector Chalmers mentions the 79th run around the school. And what do you think? This coincides with the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, where they discussed the risk of World War III. And yes, this session took place at the end of 2024. Coincidence? Again, I don't think so. Especially considering how The Simpsons creators love embedding hidden meanings and hints, this makes you wonder. Especially since we see 2 predictions at once in one episode. Well, since I started talking about World War III. In November 1987, when The Simpsons were just beginning their journey, they released a short film called World War III. It was a dark episode where Homer tries to prepare his family for World War III, conducting nighttime drills and simulating bomb drops. Back then, it seemed like complete satire. But today, decades later, the world really hasn't become safer. Now the global situation is extremely tense. Russia's war with Ukraine, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Syria, internal conflicts in Myanmar and Sudan civil war, and Somalia, Mexico's drug war. This is just part of a huge list. Thousands of lives are lost every year, sometimes every day, and tensions between major powers, USA, Russia, China, and North Korea continue to grow. Many experts believe the world is already on the brink of large-scale war. In this context, World War III from The Simpsons looks not just like dark satire, but like a real warning for future generations. But what to do if war actually starts? The Simpsons have answers for this too. In the same episode, Homer builds a bunker, stocks up on food, and tries to protect his family. Maybe we should also think about how to prepare for the worst. Well, let's talk a bit about politics too. Here's who will come after Donald Trump. His victory in the 2016 election is one of The Simpsons' most famous predictions, but his political career isn't the only topic the animated series predicted. In the Treehouse of Horror 16 episode, which aired in 2016, viewers could notice a funny detail. Homer wears a badge saying Ivanka 2028. At first glance, this seems like ordinary satire. But just 2 years later, this moment would take on new colors. In 2018, Ivanka Trump actually gave an interview where she stated she doesn't rule out the possibility of running for US president. Moreover, she emphasized that she'd like to become the first female president, and her ambitions extend far beyond the role of advisor in her father's administration. This statement caused massive discussions, and political circles seriously began talking about her possible participation in elections. And long before this, conversations about Ivanka's political future were already circulating in the media. In 2017, a poll was conducted showing that 44% of Americans view her positively, making her one of the most popular figures in Trump's circle. Some Republicans even suggested she could become her father's full successor. And yes, after the second election, many prophesied that Trump will seize power for decades, and family succession fits perfectly here. By the way, I forgot to mention Trump's second term. Most interestingly, The Simpsons already hinted at this back in 2015. In the episode Bart to the Future, Homer falls from the sky, and in the background there's a Trump 2024 poster. How could the creators foresee this? How can you accidentally guess this? Or maybe they have access to a time machine. I don't know. And if that's not enough, remember the 2001 episode where Lisa, being president, mentions that her predecessor was Donald Trump. And what do you think? In 2017, he actually became president, guessing the same event twice. That's too much even for probability theory. But that's not all. Next will be predictions that might scare you even more. Meanwhile, here's another bullseye hit. In the 9th episode of the second season, which aired in distant 1990, Marge faces the question of censorship. Springfield residents suddenly decide that Michelangelo's famous David statue is too naked and demand it be covered. Eventually, to calm the passions, poor David simply gets jeans pulled on. Funny, but in reality this was repeated too. In 2016, debates erupted in St. Petersburg around a copy of this sculpture. They proposed either covering it or removing it entirely. And in 2023, a Florida school deemed David too naked, causing an international scandal. Result, the mayor personally invited the American principal to come and verify that it's still art. Well, in 2025, all these disputes continue worldwide. Technological progress relentlessly moves forward, and we're getting closer to a world that resembles Simpsons plots. In a 2012 episode, Them, Robot, Mr. Burns, wanting to cut costs, decides to replace all nuclear power plant employees with robots. This leads to catastrophic unemployment levels. In Springfield, 99% of people simply become jobless. Homer becomes the only human at the station, who soon discovers that machines possess human-like intelligence. Everything gets complicated when robots go out of control and start an uprising. At first glance, this is a typical science fiction plot, but in reality, automation is already being actively implemented in many spheres. For example, McDonald's is testing voice ordering systems and robots capable of making French fries. In 2023, the White Castle restaurant chain installed robot fryers and flippers that not only fry potatoes but do it much faster and more efficiently than humans. What can we say about large factories that already assemble cars themselves? In California, fast food restaurants use automated cash registers that completely replace staff. But robotization doesn't just concern food service. China is already testing driverless taxis. What about total surveillance? The Simpsons movie in 2007 literally drew our future. Remember the scene where Marge dismisses Lisa, who's worried they're being eavesdropped on, and then the camera takes us to an NSA office where agents are actually listening to their conversation. Ironic, yes, but reality can be even worse. In 2013, Edward Snowden, former CIA employee, revealed shocking facts about NSA surveillance programs like PRISM. It turns out the government can access user data from major IT companies. Global scandal, discussions about privacy, citizens' rights, and boundaries of state control. All this became our reality. And here, the Simpsons were prophets again. They didn't just joke, but raise a topic that became relevant only years later. So maybe we should revisit this moment and think about who's listening to us now. Yes, and jokes about Alexa, about cameras inside it, and Comrade Major in it become maximally relevant. What do you think about conspiracy predictions? In one of the most fantastic Simpsons episodes that aired in '96, there's an interesting moment. In the Citizen Kang short from Treehouse of Horror 7, Homer learns that presidential candidates Bill Clinton and Bob Dole are actually aliens who replace real politicians to seize power in the USA and then the whole world. Funny, right? But this crazy idea strangely resonates with conspiracy theories claiming that reptiloids have long been hiding among influential people in America. For example, David Icke, a British conspiracy theory enthusiast, actively promotes the idea that reptiloids are ruling the entire world right now. According to him, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, even the Queen of England, These are humanoid reptiles, and here science adds fuel to the fire. In the 60s, the reptilian brain theory appeared, parts of our brain responsible for instincts. Conspiracy theorists immediately caught on. See, we're all reptile descendants, which means we're controlled by them too. So maybe the Simpsons weren't just joking, but knew something we don't. Yes, here's another coincidence that melts your brain. In the second episode of The Simpsons' 10th season, which aired way back in '98, Homer decides to follow Thomas Edison's footsteps and become a great inventor. In one scene, he derives some strange equation on a blackboard. At first, it seems like just a random set of numbers, but no. British science writer Simon Singh discovered that this complex mathematical expression almost exactly predicts the mass of the Higgs boson, the very one scientists discovered only in 2012. The error there is literally tiny. It turns out Homer knew 14 years before the official discovery what physics had yet to prove. So who's the real genius here? And how can we skip ecology? The Simpsons movie, released in 2007, isn't just a funny cartoon, but a real environmental manifesto. Homer Simpson, as always, puts his desires above common sense and pollutes Lake Springfield with pig waste. Well, someone has to do it, right? As a result, the town gets covered with a giant glass dome to prevent toxins from spreading across the country. Fantasy, yes, but as often happens with The Simpsons, everything isn't far from reality. Remember Flint, Michigan, where due to negligence, water was poisoned with lead. Here is no joke anymore. These are real consequences of environmental neglect. And in the cartoon, the president is plot twist Arnold Schwarzenegger himself, who, by the way, in real life as California governor, actively fought for ecology. Ironic, perhaps. But this image emphasizes how important it is to have people in power ready to solve environmental problems. Speaking of Schwarzenegger, by law he couldn't become US president since he wasn't born in America. But who knows, maybe one day the law will change and we'll see him in the Oval Office. But really, after Ivanka Trump, though he'll probably be over 90 by then. Now about future technologies. Flying cars, the dream of scientists, engineers, and screenwriters that regularly appears in movies and books. And, of course, The Simpsons couldn't pass this by. In a 2005 episode future drama, Homer decides that ordinary spending is boring and blows all the family's money not only on an underwater house, but also on developing a flying car. And in fictional 2013, he's already cruising the sky with Bart while we're still stuck in traffic. Or are we? Actually, the air transport industry is developing actively. Uber dreamed of launching flying taxis by 2020, and Larry Page in 2018 presented the Kitty Hawk Flyer prototype. But here's the problem. Battery technology doesn't yet allow long-distance flying, and air traffic needs to be organized somehow. But there are already cars capable of staying airborne for several hours. In one Simpsons episode called Bart to the Future, Marge and Bart don't just entertain themselves in virtual reality, but literally immerse themselves headfirst. Special goggles and tubes allow them not only to see the digital world, but also taste virtual food. Fantasy at first glance, yes, but in reality, scientists are already working hard to bring this concept to life. Back in 2013, researchers from the National University of Singapore presented a device capable of simulating taste sensations using electrical and thermal impulses. That is, no real products, just signals transmitted directly to your tongue. Want something sweet? Please, your brain already believes you're eating chocolate, though you only have wires in your hands. And in Tokyo, they've taken the next step. They opened the first virtual reality restaurant there. Visitors put on VR headsets, immerse themselves in a created digital atmosphere, and feel food taste even if it's not on the plate. Interestingly, researchers from Cornell University found that if you eat cheese in a pleasant virtual environment, it seems much tastier. Apparently, the brain not only believes in digital food, but also knows how to embellish it. Well, who among us hasn't dreamed of teleportation? Only in reality, everything isn't as simple as in The Simpsons. In the Treehouse of Horror episode, Homer, like a true innovator, transforms into a flyman. Funny, yes, but behind this comedy lie quite serious scientific ideas. Quantum entanglement, for example, already allows teleporting photons over huge distances. 2017 experiments proved this is possible in principle, but teleporting humans is much more complex. Scientists from the University of Leicester calculated that transmitting data about a human organism would require an incredible amount of information. We're talking about numbers that are hard to even imagine, like YouTube's fine to the Russian Federation. So for now, teleportation of atoms and molecules, let alone entire organisms, remains fantasy. But who knows? Well, ready for predictions about the USA's breakup? The Simpsons are back in action. In 2011, in an episode about the future, Lisa can't use teleportation due to pregnancy. And before her, two passengers calmly teleport, with one heading to the independent Republic of Texas. A joke, but no. Social media users see this as a prediction. Last January, the Texas National Guard took control of a border section with Mexico, closing access to federal border agents. President Biden threatened strict measures, but Texas's governor was supported by 25 states. Tensions escalated. And here's what's interesting. Only Texas legally has the right to leave the USA. So maybe the Simpsons hit the mark again. Will Texas become independent in the future? Still unknown. In March 2016, The Simpsons released an episode called The Marge Ian Chronicles, presenting viewers with a fantastic concept of Mars colonization. In this episode, Homer and his family participate in a program that later turns out to be a scam. However, despite all difficulties, Marge and Lisa still reach Mars, though only in imagination. According to the plot, this was supposed to happen in 2051. But let's move to reality. Elon Musk and his SpaceX company have long been working on ambitious Mars colonization plans. Musk has repeatedly stated that the first crewed mission to the Red Planet could launch as early as 2026 to 2027. And yes, now he has access to huge funding and is in the US government. Musk is actively developing the Starship rocket, which in his design will become the key to interplanetary travel. He envisions a future where Mars becomes humanity's second home with cities, infrastructure, and possibly even its own Martian culture. While this sounds like science fiction, practically everything Musk does sounds like fiction, but eventually he achieves it. Here's real technology magic. In The Simpsons' 34th season, Bart receives a holographic party invitation. Just a couple years ago, this seemed like pure fantasy, but now reality is catching up with cartoons. HoloConnect company is developing a product called HoloBox, something like a phone booth that allows displaying full-size holograms of callers. Imagine calling a friend and he appears before you as a hologram, as if standing nearby. Sounds like a Star Wars scene, but it's already real reality. This technology promises to make video calls so realistic that conversations will seem natural even if your caller is on another continent. All you need is electricity and internet. Whether holograms will become part of our daily life this year remains an open question, but technology is developing rapidly, and what seemed impossible literally yesterday is on the threshold of reality today, and it doesn't cost huge money. But let's talk about sports too. In The Simpsons' 10th season, which aired way back in '99, there's an episode, The Old Man, the C Student, where a character representing France declares that Paris will be the perfect venue for the 2024 Olympics. The scene ends Simpson-style comically. The Frenchman passionately throws wine in the chairman's face. But what do you think? 25 years later, this prediction comes true. The 2024 Summer Olympics actually took place in Paris from July 26 to August 11. How could The Simpsons creators guess this 25 years before the event? It seems simply incredible. Here's another cool technology predicted in the cartoon. In the third season finale called Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes? Herb, Homer's half-brother, creates a device that translates baby babble into understandable speech. Herb, who previously lost his fortune, borrows $2,000 from Homer to develop this product. And as it turned out, this was a very profitable investment. Now let's move to reality. A company called Zoundream is already working on technology that will allow parents and pediatricians to understand what exactly an infant who can't speak feels or wants. Their approach includes using non-invasive monitoring systems and artificial intelligence to analyze baby speech. Of course, the internet is full of apps promising to interpret baby babble, cat meowing, dog barking, and sparrow chirping. But most don't meet expectations. However, Zoundream claims their technology will work significantly more accurately thanks to an innovative sound-based system. Or, here in the 19th episode of the 6th season, a fish called Selma, Lisa travels to London, and in the background stands a skyscraper suspiciously similar to the Shard. Coincidence, perhaps, but here's what's interesting. This glass giant was only conceived in 2000 by architect Renzo Piano, the same one who created the Pompidou Center in Paris, and it was built from 2007 to 2012. Everything would be fine, but the episode aired way back in '95. The Shard basically didn't exist in plans or thoughts anywhere. How could they guess the shape and practically exact location remains a mystery. I think it's just some machine that can transport Simpsons creators to the future. Well, I suggest finishing with Apple Technologies. Last year, the world saw Apple's revolutionary product, the Vision Pro virtual reality headset, which allows users to immerse themselves in ultra-realistic virtual worlds. But should we be surprised? Since The Simpsons already hinted at such technological development. Back in 2016, in the episode Friends and Family, Mr. Burns used a VR headset prototype so Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie could play the perfect family. This technology remarkably resembles Vision Pro, even just visually. When the headset became available in Springfield, real chaos began. People stumbled over real objects while immersed in the virtual world. Now, when Vision Pro hit the market, we see similar scenarios in real life. Apple even had to restrict headset use while moving to avoid such incidents. How the Simpsons could predict this 6 years before announcement is simply incomprehensible. And moreover, Meta Quest 3 and 3 Seconds headsets have now been released, costing almost 5 times less than Apple's product and available to all users. But they also restrict people from moving in them, although the headset has a built-in camera and can quite well see everything happening around. But it's simply banally dangerous. Well, that's everything, friends. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. So, are the Simpsons time travelers or just incredibly lucky guessers? Either way, maybe we should start taking notes from Springfield. What prediction shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. Hit subscribe for more mind-bending content, because if the Simpsons are right, the future is going to be wild. See you next time.